I'm Jarrod Kimber. You're watching the Taking It Slow podcast. Please like and subscribe and comment and do all those things. But mostly go to my channel first and do it on my channel and then come back here and do it on this channel.
It's another Sunday. You know what that means. It's time to take it slow. As you must have realized by now, we have Jarrod Kimber on the podcast today, one of the most fascinating people to talk cricket with. Just a quick disclaimer during the recording of the actual podcast, there were some audio issues at my end. So while you will hear Jared's voice loud and clear, there might be some nagging audio issues on my end. The voice isn't inaudible, but it is not the usual quality that you expect from the podcast. So, with that out of the way, let's dive right in, people.
Our guest today is one of the finest exponents of the written word on the subject of cricket and a lot more. He's one of the most insightful minds who speak about the sport that we love. He's a writer, he's a content creator, an analyst, a commentator, has been the general manager of a franchise. He's a half-decent leg spinner. Probably the only job he hasn't done so far is umpiring. An absolute pleasure to welcome back on the Taking It Slow podcast, Jarrod Kimber. How are you, mate?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me on.
Jarrod, when I initially reached out to you, I thought we'll talk about the aftermath of the World T20. But in the last couple of days, so much has happened. We've had the Azim Rafiq expose today. We've had stuff about Tim Paine. There is so much news. Have you had time to process it at all?
No, not really. I've not been working because I'm about to have 7 tests come up. So as interested as I'm in Tim Paine's penis as everyone else, I really, just haven't had time to focus on it.
What do you make of it? How does it change the
What do I make of his penis? Not much.
I'm just a little bewildered how he's still available for selection. I mean, clearly he's stepped down of moral guilt.
They let him captain even though they knew about this already. So why would he not be able to play? Right? I mean, the whole thing is so bizarre. They basically seem to know he did it and they accepted it. And now that it's coming out and he's not captaincy material anymore. He was captaincy material before. The only thing different is we know about it. Very, very, very weird. I honestly, I'm kind of just skipping it because of how odd the whole thing is.
Yeah, he's been the postal child of the entire culture change or the culture revolution that they've been supposedly getting going.
Look, that's where the whole thing is absolute nonsense. You can go back and read my piece about Australian cricket culture. I specifically talk about Tim Paine in that and the good bloke culture. And you can see it. You can read articles. People are good bloke. No one's a good bloke. It's a nonsense Australian phrase that we use for people we like, right? It means nothing. Yeah. And then to say, he's changed all these things. Well, I'm not sure he did. I thought sometimes some of his sledging was idiotic, and it came back to bite him. I thought you could argue that he was bullying Marnus at times out in the field, which I thought was a very odd thing to do. Some of the things he said at press conferences sounded like old Australian captains, Edgbaston's not the most brutal ground in the world, all this sort of stuff. And that's not having a go at Tim Paine. He's just a normal person. Once you make someone the face of something like this, like, when Tiger Woods was Mr. Family Man, it's like all that stuff's always going to fall down. How many conservative politicians need to get caught with an underage male prostitute before we understand that it's all bullshit? And I think that was always the case here. Almost everything that has been said about Australia changing the way they played after Sandpaper Gate is complete bullshit. And maybe this is the exclamation mark on the end of that.
The weird part is that they doubled down on it, even after this coming to light back in 2017.
Even when they knew, and they kept pushing him as the good guy. It's like it was always going to come out something like that because it's worth money. If things are worth money, they usually come out. People want attention, whatever. I haven't gone through all of his texts or anything. And look, if cheating on your wife makes you not a viable candidate for Test captain, I tell you what, there aren't many Test captains left in the world. Over the history of our sport. Sadly, the way that cricket goes, where these guys are on tour for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, it kind of lends itself to having affairs. That can't be excused in Tim Paine's case, being that his was at home. But as a general rule, players cheat a lot. I'll tell you something directly from a Test cricketer. They told me, they said there are two kinds of Test cricketers. There are Test cricketers who take a hard drive full of porn, and there are Test cricketers who cheat on their wives. Right? So that's the world that those guys live in. And look, I've been on those tours. I know exactly what it's like. I can certainly understand it. You'll be shocked to know women don't quite throw themselves at me with the same veracity as they do a Test captain. But I still know what it's like to have groupies. I still know what it's like to be away for long periods of times. And I think in that particular case, the whole thing's bizarre.
Enough has been said already. We don't need to lend much credence to whether Tim Paine is actually a good bloke or not. So, do you think it affects the preparation that Australia would have had as far as the Ashes is concerned? Because they were riding high on a wave of just winning the recent WT20, and I was reading 5-0 all over the media, and all the YouTube channels are proclaiming 5-0, 5-0. Does it affect them in some way?
Well, they might need a new wicketkeeper.
Does it improve their side?
Hey? Yeah, well, it could improve their side. Paine will captain differently than Cummins. It's a lot of pressure on Cummins if Cummins gets the job, but I'm assuming he will. There might be a subplot about Steve Smith and Usman Khawaja potentially being captains going ahead. So there might be politics. I don't mean that in a particularly bad way, but, Khawaja and Smith might have to deal with those sorts of things. Look, it does change things. I don't think at the end of the day he's not... I know it's weird to say about a captain, but he's not a key member of this side. I think they could replace him, even if they got another wicketkeeper in to average 25. Is it that much of a difference? I'm not sure. But yeah, my guess would be that the way that these things should operate is that while he would have been very heavily involved in the analysis and the preparation and the research, that there are obviously, it's not Tim Paine. It's not like the old days where captains did it all on their own by talking to people. Like all that information should be able to be transferred over to someone like Pat Cummins.
Fair. Cummins sounds like a decent bet to put your money on as far as going forward is concerned. But if, as you said, if Usman Khawaja is a candidate for the captaincy role, it would be quite the journey for him to be dropped out. No,
definitely. But they don't have a choice because they can't give it to Warner. They probably won't give it to Smith, is my guess. Although, especially now with what's just happened, they probably won't want to go back to Smith. And I don't think they want to give it to Cummins because it means they can't rest him, right? There's a social construct, the reason that captains weren't bowlers, and it comes from the English game, which is that essentially batters were amateurs and bowlers were professionals, right? That's why we haven't had more bowling captains in cricket. For all the stuff about how they use themselves and all that sort of stuff, it basically comes down to class, right? But in modern cricket, where you want to rest your bowlers, it's not ideal to have a bowler as your captain. So it's a really, really interesting thing.
You just keep on mentioning about the 7 tests that you're coming up with. So for those unaware, you are also a commentator for TalkSport. Apart from being a commentator for TalkSport, you're also an analyst, a damn good one at that. You've also been the general manager for a T20 franchise. You reckon you want to get back into those fields again? I mean, there are 2 new franchises coming up in the IPL itself. Have you sent out any feelers for general management or the role of an analyst? I mean, they could do much worse than hiring you.
I don't think I'd get a general manager job in the IPL. I think they'd probably think that's a bit of a stretch. Look, I talked to 2 IPL teams last year, and I have been in touch with one of the newer teams as well. I don't think I'm getting a job with anyone, but I'm open. Most of them have my phone number if they need it. But yeah, no. I really liked being a general manager. I think it kind of suits my personality and probably my skills. I think I think there's a couple of owners who say, a general manager should be someone that's very good with business. And I'm like, well, I think I have a good grasp of business, but realistically, I think what a general manager should be able to do is be able to have the bigger picture of the development of a team. And that is probably something that I am probably better at than probably some other analysts. And they are undoubtedly better analysts than me in cricket, and I've spent a lot more time doing the job than I have. But my ability to know everyone and make the right phone calls and also, being a journalist helps you fact checking things, all those little things that you need. That was the job I really enjoyed the most. So yeah, I'd be shocked if I never get another run at it. IPL is great, and obviously they would pay a lot of money, and all these things are good. And it's the best league. I don't think you'd want to go from 7 months or whatever it was of being a general manager in the CPL to running a brand new IPL franchise, unless the owners thought that I was an absolute genius and they must have me. But I wouldn't think that is how it would go. But yeah, I've been over the last couple of years in constant contact with IPL teams, so it's a possibility that I'll go back down that road. I haven't walked away from it. It's just that I have to pay my bills. So, at this stage, I would very much be happy to do that. But yeah, I'm commentating on 2 tests for TalkSport, the India-New Zealand series, and then I've got the Ashes after that. So, at the moment, I'm pretty much booked up with that, unless someone turns up to my house with a dump truck full of money, and they're more than welcome to.
Speaking of the India-New Zealand series, there is one going on as we speak. I mean, the amount of cricket has become nauseating. I mean, 3 days back we finished the T20 World Cup, and immediately right from there, the New Zealand team is coming to India and starting off another series. It is true that people are getting rested, but what is the point of having this much cricket apart from satiating the egos of the cricket boards or bringing in the cash registers? Is there a point even more in such bilateral series, and do you feel we'll see them being phased out in the near future?
Look, I've thought for a long time they will be phased out, but realistically, until there is proper league structure at Test cricket, one-day cricket, I don't think we'll ever have one in T20 cricket, is my guess. But until there is, this will continue to happen. We've got too much cricket because we had coronavirus, and instead of cancelling a bunch of stuff, we're still trying to fit it all in. That's why we have too much cricket. There is a reality that cricket boards will have to fire people, and people will lose their jobs if there isn't the cricket played. I completely understand that. But I also understand the other side of it, which is that you're making 11, 15, 25 people mentally and physically exhausted. If your job is to make sure that your cricket team is winning, I don't know how many boards are actually currently doing that, if we're being honest.
So the bubble fatigue that you just mentioned was cited as one of the key reasons for the early exit of the Indian cricket team from the World Cup as well. And while understandable, it was a matter of 2 bad days where you did not win the toss. Things did not go into your favor. But for people who understand cricket on a deeper level, realize that the Indian cricket team wasn't really one of the favorites to win the World Cup to begin with. I mean, playing with 3 anchors up top, not having game breakers during the middle order as well. Pandya in very poor form over the last 2-3 months. Their only big hitter who can hit from the word go. Pant was on and off. So they weren't really coming off a hot streak as far as their preparation was concerned. Yes, they played in the IPL, they played in the same situations, but I felt they weren't one of the top few favorites. Australia did spring up a surprise, but do you feel India in general has been a good T20 side overall for the last years that you've been watching them?
I don't think this tournament looked like a crapshoot coming in, and the fact that probably maybe the 5th or 6th best team won the tournament tells you that. The fact that no Asian team made the final tells you that. The fact that England had 5 injuries and went from favourites to an average team during the tournament, again, tells you that. New Zealand basically plucked an opener out of their ass 5 minutes before the tournament started. It was a very, very random tournament. Look, they've got anchors, but does India have more anchors than Pakistan? My God, they had a lot of anchors in their team, right? Yeah. Even New Zealand, you could argue, probably had 3 at the top of their order. Guptill's probably no longer explosive, and Daryl Mitchell, he's got a strike.
Would you really call Guptill an anchor?
These days, probably. He look, he has the ability to explode, but he's not the Martin Guptill of 5 years ago. I don't think he's that player anymore. I'm not too worried about India. Went in with 3 anchors, and their top order were bowled out for nothing in the 2 games that mattered. Right? What more can you do? They picked the guys who were supposed to bat long time, and they didn't bat. Right? They're not bad batters. It just happened to be that they failed in back-to-back games. I think looking back on it, we will probably say that India is worse than we thought they were, and West Indies is worse than we thought they were. I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think New Zealand is that much better a T20 team than West Indies or India. I certainly don't think Australia is that much better than either of those teams either. Difference can be, especially in a short tournament like this, can be form, luck, as you said, due. All these sorts of things play a big part in them. I honestly believe if this was a 15-game league, a bit like the IPL or one of the other franchise leagues, I'd be shocked if India didn't make the semi-finals and if West Indies didn't eventually get a pretty good run together themselves. So what you have here is an incredibly small sample size. And as I've been saying over and over again, if you look at the IPL, in the last 3 games before the finals, Chennai lost them. Think about that from there's 5-6 games that Chennai had to play in that tournament. If they played in the World Cup and they'd started with those last 3 games, we all would say, well, this is a rubbish team, right?
Yeah.
That's why small sample sizes don't mean anything, right? And then you also have a team like South Africa who ended up with a 4-1 record. In that 4-1 record, they were terrible against Australia in their loss, but they still almost got over that game because Australia completely balls up the chase. They beat England when it didn't matter. They should have lost to Sri Lanka, and they beat the West Indies when Lendl Simmons had perhaps the worst innings anyone's ever played at a T20 World Cup. And I think I'm missing another game as well. I can't remember what happened. No, Bangladesh. They smashed Bangladesh, so that's fine. Yeah. My point is, if England's fully fit and fully motivated, and Sri Lanka win that other game, or Lendl Simmons bats like he can, they go 2-3, right? Maybe 3-2, and then how are we thinking about them? And that's what I tried to do with my IPL analysis all year, which is it really frustrates people. But Delhi's on top. Yeah, Delhi's on top, and they've had a good run. But it's also worth looking at, are they a better team than Chennai, right? And then, to be able to look at, these different things. And then you just have the basic thing of someone like we still know Mumbai's a good team. It's just that Mumbai had a bad form run and couldn't get it together. We know Kolkata had a terrible form run and then a good form run. I don't think they're as good as they were at the end of the season. I don't think they're as bad as they were at the start of the season. But these sorts of things happen in this sort of flukish environment. And it's very hard for other people to understand that sort of thing. You only have to look at a team like Sunrisers, like unraveling to understand. It's quite clear now that the owners of Sunrisers made the call to drop David Warner, and what an idiotic call that was. And some of us said it at the time. You don't drop the best player in the IPL for 6 years because he's played 5 bad games, right? And everyone is going to have a form fluctuation. I did a big video on KL Rahul, and everyone's like, he's got to be dropped from India. He's got to be dropped from India. And it's like, wait a minute. Before he had these 5 or 6 bad games, he was the most consistent batter that T20 cricket had ever had.
Ever seen, yes.
Not even close. No one else had even got close to being as consistent a run scorer, even on the lower level. Like my cutoff was scoring double figures. But when I put it to other analysts, they were like, this is like a 20,000 to 1 shot. No one should ever score double figures in T20 cricket 30 times or whatever he did, 40 times in a row. And yet he played 4 or 5 bad innings, and everyone was on top. So that is the danger of saying that this is a bad Indian team. I mean, when most of my friends who do analysis on these teams, when we've looked at it, we've said that the main problem with India was probably their bowling, and that was not why they went out of this tournament.
Jarrod, quickly switching to you over the last year or so. So I have sort of grown up reading your articles, right from the days of Cricket with Balls to your articles or your profile pieces on Cricket Info and a lot more. Over the last few months or so, I would say you've switched your kind of content that you put out to the audio version more, to the video version more. Or you've started putting out a lot more video content. Why has there been a shift in the type of content that you put out? Does it have to do with the average attention span of the reader these days? They don't go through as much the text articles as they used to, Or
No,
is
not at
video
all.
just easy to put out?
Most of my videos I've also made into written articles. So I certainly wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't say that at all. What's a way of putting it? I started on YouTube. In fact, before I was, at the very start, I was a blogger. Before I even wrote about cricket, then I did YouTube videos. I was a filmmaker. So it was always within me. I tried to get radio shows up back when I was younger, but it wasn't quite well known enough to be able to pull any of those off. So I was always very interested in audio and video. Obviously, I've made a film. I broke into Cricinfo by making videos, not by writing. That was why they hired me, was for my videos. So it was always there. I think as much as anything, Cricinfo just stopped asking for videos, right? Outside of polite inquiries, they didn't really ask for them anymore. And I wasn't really used for video, which is quite funny thinking that that's how I got the job with them in the first place. And I think over a period of time, I just sort of didn't think about that. And then my friend Arya Yutsu, who is the person behind Akash Chopra's channel and Snahal's channel.
Snahal's channel, yeah. We had Snehal on last
Brad
week.
Hogg, Steve Harmison, me, Mel Farrell. I basically, I don't know if you'd call it trained him up, but helped him. He was my camera person back at Cricinfo quite a lot of the time. And I could tell he was a very talented and very intelligent person. And I sort of trained him up, partly because he did a lot of things that I didn't do. So I could get him to go do stuff that I wouldn't want to do myself. And he would do it. And, I spent, I don't know, maybe a couple of summers really training him in the art of how to understand all these sorts of things. He kept coming back when Akash's channel started to get big. He kept coming back and saying, "You should do YouTube." And I was like, "I'm not going to sit in front of a fucking camera and speak. I can't be bothered doing that." And he's like, no, you should do this. And then when I did the Double Century podcast, I said to him, "Look, here's a whole podcast. If you want to make it visual, good luck. Go ahead. Have fun with it, right?" Yeah. And so that was the original plan. And then he sent me back some stuff. I can't even remember what it was now, but I think it's a website called Chalkboard Football or Whiteboard Football, a YouTube channel. And he wasn't showing me it to say we should do stuff like that. He was showing how you can animate in a different way, cheaper, quicker way. And I was like, "Can we do this?" And he's like, "Yeah, we can do this." And I said, "Well, I'll do that if it's not my face in front of these videos." And so we just started making them really. I think I write quite visually anyway. So other than making sure I'm sort of matching visuals with words, which is slightly different, my writing style sort of follows that anyway. And then, that the YouTube channel's probably gone through a few different iterations of, we had very short videos at the start, which we sold to Cricinfo. And now we have quite long videos, which we've actually sold a couple to Cricinfo of recent times. And it probably
There's the last knock as well.
Yeah, and then the last knock. Well, I wanted to. The last knock is we're aware of the limitations of the animation that we use, and there are certain videos where the animation's perfect for it. And there are certain videos where you probably want to see me more, maybe. And what we didn't want was 20 minutes of me talking. So you could see there's some other, very good cricket channels coming up, that just have the hosts talking and they're good. There's not, you've got one. There's plenty of those out there. What we wanted it to be really was the last knock. We wanted to be articles that I could read. And then we wanted it to be a little bit visual because, again, I don't want it just to be my face. I never really wanted it to be that YouTuber ever. I was around when YouTube started, so I'm old enough to remember those sorts of things. And so I said that we could do Last Knock was my idea, so that we could do something that was a bit more. Let's say, so we did one on Quinton de Kock and quotas in cricket. You can't really animate that because a lot of it is me talking, right? And the only way to animate it would be to actually go out and spend a lot of money, or it would take months to turn it around. We might get to a position, eventually where we have 4 or 5 people working on the channel, but essentially I'm working on it part-time. We've got Muku, our main producer, who works on it almost full-time at the moment, but that's only a recent thing that he's sort of come in. So realistically, we probably were working on it about 70% of the time, which means we had to come up with shows that would do what we wanted. So the last knock was really that attempt, I suppose, as much as anything, to animate, not animate, but put visuals on something, so it isn't just human speaks. Because the video essay type
the churn rate is extremely high for the last knock. I mean, you have a new video up every second day, and I'm pretty sure that there has to be a detailed, elaborate script before every video that you have to sit down and write, put your thoughts to it, rewrite it over at least a couple of times. Then you have to record it. Then there is the editing that needs to go into that. How are you able to maintain this high churn rate?
You don't. There's not as much editing as you would think, because that's the great thing about reading it out loud. So what I tell young writers is, when you write something, you should read it out loud and you see all the mistakes. So when I'm writing it, I write it quite quickly, and then when I'm reading it for the show, I can basically edit on the fly.
Okay.
So there is that does help. Although then I usually edit it anyway and put it up online. So we do that. Then me and Muku have come up with like a bit of a, what's the best way of putting it? Almost like a double act, where I do some things, he does other things, so that one of us is always moving, or both of us are always moving, I suppose is a better way of putting it, which helps with that. But yeah, we made Last Knock. Originally, it used to take us 3 or 4 days to get them online, and now I think Muku reckons he can get some of them up in 3 hours now. That's how much quicker we've got the process over the period of time. So yeah, look, my skill was always writing really quickly and working really quickly. That was why I could write a feature from a cricket ground when other people couldn't during a game. It's also, we used to, if you look at the old Two Pricks at the Ashes, the original video series I had, and then Two Chucks, the amount of editing in that like blew people's minds, that we could get it out within 24 hours, especially when the technology wasn't up to the speed of which it is now. So Muku can put our script through a program called Descript, and you can literally take out all my pauses in one button. The way that we've, and that's what we've been doing is really, me, Muku, Arya, Shubu, someone called Rati, a lot of people that work for 42 Arya's company. Like, I'm a bit obsessed by this sort of stuff anyway, but here's a shortcut for this and here's a shortcut for that. And then it's really down to me to be able to make the thing work. So if we can get a video up within 4 or 5 hours of the close of play, which we have at times, and it's fully scripted and it has graphics in it, and everyone else can only do, in the same amount of time, can only do a live stream. Yeah. That's a huge advantage for me.
Huge advantage, yeah.
And then it's more written as well. Like, there's nothing wrong with off the cuff stuff like this and interviews and
but it has better structure, of course. It has a better flow to it.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted. I always wanted my stuff to be scripted. I get lost in my own thought processes. I think a lot better through writing. And so I always wanted it to be as written as possible. So the Last Knock is more like an article I would write for Crick Info. And I suppose the animation is probably, it's almost like a combination of almost going back to the Cricket with Balls days, and a combination of my filmmaking skills and a little bit of Muku's filmmaking skills as well. And then the kind of writing stuff that I probably, again, goes back to Cricket with Balls writing, really. And then just the ability to make it visual.
For those unaware, Jarrod also has a fantastic writing teaching course where he takes you through the nuances of writing. So if you want to check that out, do.
I'll be updating that. I don't know when, because I've got 7 test matches coming up, but I'll be updating that to put in YouTube writing and podcast writing and a few other different things. Podcast interviews.
Sign me up for that. Yes.
So that'll be part of the course. I'll just add it, so anyone who's already gone through my course can go through those bits as well. But I think they're really important. Also, things like the writing for an emailer compared to writing for other things, because most people now are probably going to start with an emailer. So it's a good way of looking at it.
Fair enough. Jarrod, as always, you've been very kind with your time. I'll not shoot the time that we've had. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you as always. And thank you for coming on the podcast. Hope you had a good time as well chatting to me.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.